Welcome back to the 41st episode of the Boy Oh Boy Wellway podcast, where today we have a huge guest, Richard Osborne, who played 283 AFL games and kicking 574 goals and won Fitzroy's leading goal kicker 5 times. Thanks heaps for coming on today, mate.
No worries, buddy. Anytime.
How'd you first get involved in footy?
Oh, wow. That's a long time ago now. I'm the youngest of three boys, so I assume I just followed in the footsteps of my two older brothers. We played a lot of sport when we were kids, whether it be we shared it around from basketball to football, and ultimately as I got older, I had to make a choice between one or the other, and I chose football. So yeah, I'd say it's probably my brothers that got me involved in the early days.
Yep. What was your path to back then it was the VFL. What was that like for you getting into VFL and to Fitzroy?
Yeah, it wasn't as clear cut as what it is now. There was no draft system or anything. Back in the early 1980s, they had the under 19s. So they had country zones and metropolitan zones, and where I lived in Bulleen was Fitzroy's zone. So we went and played at Fitzroy because of where we lived. Initially in the under 19s, and then if you did well in the under 19s, you got invited down to do pre-season with the senior team, which we did, and I guess we did okay then, and got a start with the senior guys. So it was all a lot more casual in those days. You could actually walk in off the street. I remember Paul Meldrum was a classic example, a guy that played at Carlton, ended up being an incredible player. The story goes that he just walked in off the street and went to Carlton and said, I want to try out. And next minute, he's one of their better players. So it probably wouldn't happen these days with the rules.
Yeah, what were your first couple of weeks at Fitzroy like for you?
Again, that I'd be stretching my memory, but I started with Gary Pert and Paul Roos, so the three of us probably helped each other out early days, and we had some incredible mentors like Mickey Conlon and Bernie Quinlan and Laurie Serafini and these sort of guys that really took us under their wings. So it was like one big extended family. So it was as much as we were young, only 17, 18-year-old kids, we felt welcome straight away. So it was a pretty easy transition.
Yeah, what was it like working with some of the greats of Fitzroy during your early days?
Yeah, I suppose because I didn't barrack for Fitzroy as a kid. I probably wasn't that overwhelmed by playing with superstars like Bernie Quinlan and Mickey Conlon and these sort of guys. You just saw them as teammates and mates. But I suppose if I was a Collingwood supporter as a kid, if I walked in there and I was playing with Rene Kink and Peter Dacos and these sort of players and Tony Shaw, it might have been a little bit more daunting. But, going in and you're just a young kid with no fear. It was great. Really, really good fun. I enjoyed every minute of it.
Yeah. What was it like being at a very a VFL club before you were 18?
Yeah, again, you don't really, when you're young, when you're 17, 18-year-old kid, you don't really think too much. You got no fear, and you just go out there, and you could run through a brick wall. But as you get older, and you've had a few injuries, and you've felt a bit of pain and a few ups and downs, I suppose you get a little bit softer. But when you're a young kid, you think you're bulletproof, so you just go for it, and it's it was awesome.
Yeah, was there anyone who sort of acted as a mentor to you when you first arrived at Fitzroy?
Yeah, I'd say the one that I probably gravitated to the most would have been Mickey Conlon. I was a pretty skinny kid when I went down there, and Mick was built like the Incredible Hulk. So I suppose I tried to emulate him. I'm not sure if I ever got as big as Mick was, but he lived in the gym and trained the house down. So I tried to follow in his footsteps, and hopefully I did a fairly good job of it.
Yeah, what was the lead up to finding out you were going to debut like for you?
Well, I remember. I don't actually remember my the lead up to the debut. But I remember my first game where I actually got a start on the ground. I think it might have been the following year. Rossi Thornton, who was one of the more senior players, he got an injury, and I was up in Ringwood at a 10-pin bowling alley Friday night before the game, and I got a call from Robert Wall saying, "Oh, Ross is injured, and you're actually going to be starting on the ground tomorrow." So, yeah, I still remember that vividly. That must have been 1983, which was my second year there.
Yeah, what was your first year at Fitzroy like for you?
Yeah, 1982 was my first year in the senior team. I debuted, I think it was probably a week or two after my 18th birthday. So I just turned 18 and playing against Essendon at Windy Hill, which was, one of the traditional suburban grounds back in the day. And, they have been a pretty tough and rugged team. And I came on, I think it was half time. I came on, we were 10 goals down and we ended up getting belted by 15 goals. So that was my introduction to VFL football. And unfortunately, that was the only game I played for that year. But it was, for a skinny little kid from the suburbs, it was a pretty daunting debut.
Yeah, when did you sort of feel early on in career that you felt like you belonged at the AFL level?
I don't know. You don't really put too much thought into it once you're out there. You just go for it, and I think maybe as you get older, you put a fair bit more thought into your game. But when you're a young kid, as I said, you feel like you're bulletproof and you'd run through a brick wall. So you always feel like you're up to it. Once you're out there, you're good enough to be picked. You just go there and do your best.
Yeah, what was it like to come second in Fitzroy's Best and Fairest in 1984?
Yeah, again, that was an interesting one. I would have been 84, so I was only 20 years of age. And as it panned out, we ended up just scraping into the finals, and we played Collingwood in an elimination final in 1984. So at the end of the home and away season, if we didn't make that final, that game against Collingwood, I'd actually won the Best and Fairest. So I was in front at the end of the home and away season. But I think Rossi Thornton, who we spoke about earlier, he got votes in the game against Collingwood, and he ended up tipping me at the post. So it was a good result though for a 20-year-old kid to come second in the Best and Fairest. I was pretty stoked actually. So it was all good fun. But I never, to be honest, I never played to win awards. I wasn't interested in winning Best and Fairest, or end up winning goal kicking awards and those sorts of things. But I don't know if some guys think that sort of way, but I never thought about it. I was just out there week in, week out, trying to have fun with my mates, and B, win every game you played in.
Yeah, what was it like playing in your first final?
My first final would have been 1983. Again, I was only 19, so I don't. In the perfect world, I would love to have been older and a forward and have a lot more of an impact on the game. But I was a 19-year-old kid playing in the back line, so again, you can't manipulate how old you are and what position you play, and you can't change the past or the future. But yeah, we had a pretty good team that year, and arguably we possibly could have been the best team in the competition, but we just had a couple of things not fall our way in the finals, and didn't end up making it into the grand final. But we certainly had a great team.
Yeah, can you talk us through your transition from the back line to the forward line?
I think ultimately it would have had a lot to do with Bernie Quinlan starting to get injured. That they tried. I assume that's why they threw me down forward, and I think from memory I may have started at half forward, and then when Bernie got injured or getting more and more injuries, they threw me down at full forward. So I've gone from the back line to the forward line in my last year at Collingwood, back to the back line. So I went full circle. So there's a little bit of a change.
Yeah, was that process from going to the forward line easy? Did you find that easy or difficult for you?
Um, Again, I don't know what it's like these days because the game's completely different. But to me, I always thought that playing, and I don't mean this disrespectfully to backman because I was a backman as well, but it's a lot harder playing in the forward line, or at least it was with the style of play we used to play.
Yeah.
Because as a backman, all you need to do is go one way. You stay with your man, you punch the ball away and clear it out. Whereas as a forward, you need to be a lot more creative, and you need to create the play, get rid of your man, take possession of the ball, and then somehow turn around and then attack the other way. So there was a lot more skill involved with playing up forward, I always thought, from my experiences.
Yeah. Did you take much confidence out of winning that best and fairest in 84 into the next years and the years to come?
Look, I think confidence builds confidence. So the better you're playing, the more confidence builds. And I guess the exact opposite when you're not playing that well, your confidence is pretty low. So I suppose as a 20-year-old kid finishing second in the best and fairest at a VFL level, I would have taken a lot of confidence into the following year and into the future. So yeah, it was a good result for all.
Yeah, what was it like winning your first goal kicking for Fitzroy?
Well, I can't specifically remember what it was like to be the leader of the club as a goal kicker, but I do remember vividly when you're kicking lots of goals in a game and you're the focal point. It's a real buzz. Now, again, ultimately, the full forward is the one that gets all the glory. I guess if you kick I was lucky enough to kick 10 goals in a game and 11 goals in a game, and you seem to get the glory. But ultimately, it's only a result of the hard work of all your teammates. So it's a team sport, but yeah, it's always a buzz to kick a bag of goals.
Yeah, what was it like to win 4 in a row from that point?
Yeah, again, it's momentum, I guess. When you are the full forward, you're expected to, again, possibly different these days because they play a different brand of football. But back in the era that I played in, if you were the full forward, you were the focal point, and you were the one expected to kick the majority of the goals, I guess. So it was expected, but yeah, it was always, as I said, always good to kick a lot of goals and just be at the other end of the scale.
Yeah, what was it like to be captain of Fitori in 1991?
Yeah, it was quite challenging. We didn't have a very good year, so ultimately, I think when you're a captain of a club, you tend to take on a lot more responsibility and a lot more. You feel like you owe it to the team to win. Whereas I guess if you're just another, well, this is the way I went anyway. If you're just another player, which I was for 16 of my 17 years, you didn't feel that added amount of pressure as the captain. So I enjoyed it, but as I said, we didn't have a very good year, so that was just added pressure on top of the pressure of being a captain anyway. So I'd never take it back and say no, I don't want it, but it wasn't an easy period.
So with all that pressure on you, did you feel like that sort of hindered your game a bit and you weren't able to perform as well as you could have?
Yeah, quite possibly. You didn't just run out there footloose and fancy free, so to speak, and that was my style. I didn't carry any pressure of expectation. I just went out there and had fun, and whatever happened. Whereas when you're captain, obviously you feel that there's a lot more responsibility, as that position carries.
Yeah, what led to the decision to leave Fitzroy?
Look, to be honest, I'd been there 11 years, and I felt like that just the standard of the playing group. When I say that, I mean the professionalism. I thought was going down. Guys were more worried getting fit for the end of season trip rather than winning games of football. So I just didn't want to be dragged down in that mess. And I thought if I didn't leave, I thought I may have had 1 or 2 years left, and that would have been the end of my career. Whereas I thought a fresh start would have reinvigorated me, and I would have played a lot longer. So, look, in hindsight, in the perfect world, I would love to have stayed at Fitzroy and played 17 years there, but it didn't pan out. And you make these decisions, and they happen. That's life.
Yeah, what was it like to be picked up by Sydney?
Yeah, again, that was different times. I still remember getting phone calls all day long on draft day by Eddie Maguire, who was, in those days, he just would have been a reporter at Channel 10. And he'd ring me up and say, "Oh, you're going to Sydney." Then the next phone call, he'd ring me up and say, "You're going to Brisbane. You're going to Sydney. You're going to Brisbane. You're going to Sydney." And I think from memory, Sydney were the bottom team, and they had a gentleman's agreement with Brisbane, or one or the other, that if someone decent came up in the draft, Sydney wouldn't pick them, and Brisbane would be able to pick them. So that's why Eddie kept ringing me up saying, "You're going here, you're going there." So I assume, I can only assume because I wasn't privy to it, I assume once I got put in the drafts, Sydney said, "No, bugger that agreement we had. We want Osborne." So that's why I ended up with the Swans. In those days, you had no choice. You had to go or not play football. Stand out and not play football for a year. So I didn't want to go to Sydney. My fiance at the time had a good job in Melbourne. All my family were in Melbourne, and I didn't want to go to Sydney. So I actually told them that. I said, "Look, I understand the rules. If you you have drafted me, I have to go up there or stand out. I'm not going to do that. So I'll play, but I'm not staying any longer than 1 year." And that's it. That's the reason why I only stayed in Sydney for the 1 year. I didn't want to go there in the first place, and I don't mean that disrespectfully to the club. That was my choice, and that's why I only stayed there for that one season.
Yeah, based off that, did that make sort of it awkward between you and the playing group when you did get up at Sydney?
No, I don't. Not at all. No, football clubs are a pretty unique bunch of guys. We all get on pretty well. We get on really well. It doesn't matter, where you played before, what got you to the club. I didn't feel at all awkward at all. Got on really well with all the guys. I was fortunate enough to have the opportunity to be coached by Ron Barassi as well, who's a legend of our game. So it wasn't all bad. We only won one game for the whole season, but I've got some terrific memories of some friends that I met at that club that I would never have been, friends of if I didn't play with them. And that added bonus of being coached by Barras. It was incredible.
Yeah, what was your time at Sydney like for you?
It wasn't easy because we didn't have a home base as such. Sometimes we'd be training down at I think it was the Randwick Army Barracks. We didn't have a solid base. I don't think in those days we were allowed to train at the Sydney Cricket Ground that often. So it wasn't easy. Again, it doesn't help for the fact that you only win one game for the whole season, because ultimately as a professional athlete, you want to win games, not lose games. So
yeah.
It wasn't easy, but we never ran out. Well, I can't talk on behalf of the playing group, but I never ran out there to give it any less than 100%. So at the end of the day, you go out there and you do your best.
Yeah, what made you choose Footscray on your way back to Victoria?
I actually got a phone call from my manager and said, "Would you like to go to Footscray?" So they obviously showed interest in me, and I'd been knocked out pretty badly that season up in Sydney, and I don't know whether that may have scared other clubs off, but Footscray showed interest, and ironically, my grandfather played at Footscray, and so my mum was, before I went to Fitzroy, my mum was a Footscray supporter, so she was pretty happy with me going to the Doggies. And the Dogs were very similar to Fitzroy in a way, working class team, not a powerhouse of the competition. And I loved my time there. I really, really enjoyed the 3 years I had there. It was great fun, and a great group of guys too, a really good group of guys.
Yeah, what was that like playing where you had family played there before you?
I I suppose once you're out in the park, you don't think about it too much. But it was for the fact that Mum used to barrack for the doggies because her father played there. It was probably add that little bit of uniqueness to it. So no, I really, really, really enjoyed my time with the Dogs. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, what another individual accolade here. What was it like winning the goal kicking for the Doggies in 1995?
Yeah, again, I'm glad I sort of repaid them a little bit, because at the end of, at the start of '94, which was my first season at the Dogs, I actually I had a contract to play at Footscray, and I actually went over to America to try out as a punter in the NFL. And I think it's probably, in hindsight, it's probably the only thing I regret in my football career was that I, in good faith, signed a contract to play at Footscray, and I did the wrong thing by them by going overseas. Again, I can only say that in hindsight. If I had my time again, I wouldn't have done that, because they were good enough to pick me up and sign me. And to this day, I realise I did do the wrong thing. But again, you make the decisions. You don't have that beauty of hindsight. And as I said, it's probably the only thing I regret doing in my sporting career.
Yeah, can you talk us through going over to America to try and get into the NFL?
Yeah, look, again, at the end of the day, we didn't know it till we got over there. It was a little bit of a waste of time, because it'd be different now, because we've had guys like Darren Bennett and Ben Graham and Sav Rocker and these sort of guys, dominate, I guess, in that position of a punter. But when I went over there, it was before those guys had done what they've now done in the NFL, and they sort of looked at us as a bit of a circus sideshow. These Aussies. I still remember going to a camp, and the guy that ran the camp, who looked at us and said, "Well, it's good that you Aussies have come over here to learn how to kick the ball, so you can go back to your country and apply it in your own game." So as soon as he said that, we thought, "Oh no, this isn't going to end too well." Because the first time I did a tryout with the LA Rams. I think they end up going to St. Louis, and they might be back in Los Angeles now. But I did a tryout with them, and the guy that did the tryout said, "Look, you've got an incredible kick on you, but you need to come back in March, because the seasons clashed." I wasn't over there at the right time of the season, so that was one of the reasons why I went back. I had that in the back of my mind that if I did a good tryout, I might get a signing with the LA Rams. But I went back there, did a tryout with them, and unfortunately, the special teams coach, which is the guy that they have different coaches within an American football team, and special teams is one of the areas where the punters fall into. And the special teams coach had been sacked, and they put in a new guy, and he bought his own punter, so they weren't even interested in looking at me. So it didn't work out the way we wanted it to. So, but maybe that was my bad karma, because I did the wrong thing by Footscray, and it bit me on the backside, so to speak. So it was. We did it, but probably didn't do it the right way. But we went over and we tried our best.
Yeah, what was it like to join Collingwood as you went from when you were growing up?
Yeah, look, I still remember getting the phone call. My brother Graham, who played with me at Fitzroy for 6 years, he was working for a company selling Foxtel door to door. This is the early days of Foxtel, and I was sort of helping him out a little bit. So I was in the Foxtel van, and I got a phone call from Tony Shaw, totally out of the blue. wasn't expecting a phone call or anything. And Shaw, he said to me, "How would you like to come and play for Collingwood?" And I'm sort of thinking, "You're kidding, aren't you? I barrack for this team I barrack for." So that's how that ended up. And I'm sure, I don't know for a fact, but Danny Frawley, or the late Danny Frawley, he was the assistant coach at Collingwood, and I played on Spud a bit, being a full forward and him being a full back. And I'm sure Danny would have had a fair bit to do with getting me over to Collingwood, because he was a great fella. So that's how I got to Collingwood. And obviously we didn't have two outstanding years. I don't think we made the finals at all, but the difference between playing in a say Fitzroy, for example. I still remember playing the Brisbane Bears at Victoria Park when we shared the ground with Collingwood, and there was about 2,000 people at the ground. But Collingwood, win, lose or draw, we were running out every week in front of a big crowd. So that was a huge difference. And it's funny, I watched the footy the other day. Well, I don't watch a lot of footy anymore, but I watched the game the other day, and the Collingwood theme song came on when the boys were running out onto the ground. And it was the first time. It was a strange feeling. It was the first time I felt like I was almost running out with them when I heard the theme song. It was a weird feeling. That hasn't happened to me before, and I don't know why it did on the weekend. But when I heard that, saw the boys running out and heard that Collingwood theme song, it brought back some great memories.
Yeah, what led to the decision to retire?
I think 17 years of AFL football and just wear and tear on the body. It was probably a mutual decision. Retiring / being told, it's all over, so to speak. So, the body just can't take what you put it through. I had a pretty bad ankle injury that I got in the Anzac Day game in my final season, and that after that I couldn't really train properly. So I ended up losing a lot of fitness, and as I said, I was 34 years of age, and after 17 years, the body just gave in. So it was time. When it's time to give it up.
Yeah, who were some of the best players you played with throughout your career?
Well, Fitzroy, Bernie Quinlan, Gary Wilson. Gary Wilson was an absolute superstar. One of the best players I saw or played with. Obviously, Ruth was a gun as well. Mickey Conlon. We had some great footballers at Fitzroy. Up at the Swans, again, I was only there for a brief period, but Paul Kelly was, I think when I was there, it was one of his first seasons. So he wasn't the player that he ended up being, obviously, because he was only young. But he was probably he got as far as he got purely from, obviously he had some level of skill, but he trained unbelievably. That guy, he reminded me of Jeff Fennick. Actually, I was lucky enough to meet Jeff Fennick during his boxing career, and he was probably the hardest trainer in sport I'd ever come across. And Paul Kelly was probably in that bracket as well. So that's why he got as far as he got. Western Bulldogs. Obviously, I played with Dougie Hawkins at the very end of his career. Steve Wallace, Brian Royal, Chris Grant. There was some great players there too. Brad Johnson was only a kid, and Luke Darcy, though, it's probably only their first or second year, so they end up being superstars themselves. Scott West, there were some really, really good players at the Bulldogs, and then obviously at Collingwood, played with Damien Monkhurst, Graham Wright, Gavin Krasiska, Gavin Brown, Nathan Buckley, who was a genuine superstar himself, and the ultimate professional. So, I was lucky and fortunate enough to play alongside some incredible footballers. And again, fortunate enough to have played half a dozen or so state games in the good old days of the state of origin. So you played alongside the best of the best. I still vividly remember one night in South Australia where Gary Ablett Senior kicked about 7 goals or so from a half-forward flank, and it was probably the only time I felt like I was a spectator on the ground. Just watching this guy just do what he did was just incredible.
Yeah, what were the best moments of your career?
Obviously, at an individual level, kicking 10 goals against Melbourne, it might have been 11 goals, and then kicking 10 goals for the Swans in the game that we won that season. But I think ultimately you play the game to enjoy it with your mates, and it's a team sport. I was never, as much as you're a full forward and you want to kick a bag of goals, I was always a team player. I always felt like it was more enjoyable when you did things together. So I think probably 1986 was probably, as much as we didn't have as good a team as what we may have had in 1983. I think 1986 was my favourite season because we just fell over the line in the elimination final against, testing my memory now, it was against Essendon, and Mickey Conlon kicked a goal out in the wet out at Waverley. And then the following week, we beat the Swans by only a kick as well. It was only might have been 5 points or thereabouts. And then we went back out to Waverley and played in the prelim against Hawthorn. And I remember we kicked the first few goals of the game, and I remember turning to one of the boys and said, "Here we go again. We're going to the grand final." But Hawthorn put the foot down as they could back in those days and blew us out of the water. So for me, 1986 was the best season that we had as a group.
That's everything I got for you, mate. Thanks heaps once again for coming on.
Yeah, no problems at all. Good fun. Thanks for sharing it with me too.